Hello and welcome back to our weekly class in the Torah Portion. This week's Torah Portion is Acharei Mot, which means literally after the death. And we are in Leviticus chapter 16. This portion opens up after the death. We remembered a few Torah portions ago, we learned of the death of the two sons, Nadav and Avihu, the two sons of Aaron, on the 8th day as they were consecrating the tabernacle and the altar. And we then had an interruption of two Torah portions talking about a series of laws having to do with purity and impurity. And now we have God speaking to Moses and with a specific reference to the death of the two sons of Aaron as the portion opens up. And God spoke to Moses after the death of the two sons of Aaron when they approached God and died. When they approached before God and died. So here we have a very specific reference, not only to the fact that they died, but why they died. And as we see in the next verse, we're going to now link up the laws that will follow, which are the laws having to do with Yom Kippur, with the Day of Atonement, and the death of the two sons of Aaron. And the scripture continues. And God said to Moses, "Speak to Aaron your brother, that he not come at all times into the holy place within the partition veil, before the covering which is upon the ark, for then he die not. For I will appear in the cloud upon the covering." So here we have a direct reference to the death of the two sons of Aaron, followed by a warning to Aaron. If you have to be very careful, Aaron, God says. Do not come into the Holy of Holies. Don't go beyond the most interior partition to where the Ark of the Covenant is. Don't go there so that you will not die. And so an assumption here, therefore, is that this warning that God is giving to Aaron is directly connected to the cause of the death of Nadav and Avihu. And it is based on this understanding that many people believe that what Nadav and Avihu did wrong was they went in to the Holy of Holies when they were not supposed to. If you may recall, one of the theories that I put forward when we discussed the death of the two sons was that Nadav and Avihu may have become confused and thought that the service that was taking place on the 8th day was very similar to the service that would take place on Yom Kippur, on the Day of Atonement. And we can see that from the next verse, from the next verses, as we see exactly how this service on Yom Kippur is going to take place. One of the things that we notice as we're reading scripture about this service is that they are going to use the incense, and that will create a cloud that will act as some kind of a barrier between the Holy of Holies. Hello, this is Sondra Baras. Welcome back to our weekly Torah class. This week's Torah portion is Kedoshim, and it means holy. And indeed, that's what we're going to be speaking about today, about what holiness means to God as we see in these scriptures. We're going to start in chapter 19. And the portion begins as follows. And God spoke to Moses, saying, "Speak to all the congregation of the children of Israel, and say to them, You shall be holy, for I, the Lord your God, am holy." Now, this sentence in and of itself speaks volumes, because God is telling us to be holy because he is holy, which means when we need to understand how to be holy, and we're going to have here a list of specific things that God is telling us, but the introduction goes beyond the specifics. The introduction gives us a concept. We need to aspire to be holy because God is holy. And therefore, it's not just a cause and effect. It's not because God is holy. It is that God is holy. Therefore, if we study God's ways, we try to imitate his attributes, we too will be holy. And that really sets the scene for how we view all of Scripture. Because the truth of the matter is sometimes we look at Scripture and it's an amalgam of stories and particular commandments and just directives from God about what kind of person you need to be. And you may ask yourself, why do I need the stories? If the purpose of this book is to ensure that I follow God's way, why do I need the stories? But the stories also tells us something about God and his attributes. And when we see that God has taken pity on someone who has sinned, that tells us something about God. We see that God punishes somebody because they have violated a commandment. That tells us something else about God. Whether God is in his mercy or God is in judgment, both of those are attributes that are holy. And so when we're looking at God and we're looking to see how can we be holy, what this verse is coming to tell us is aspire to God's attributes, and then we ourselves will be aspiring to holiness.
To watch this program in its entirety, go to www.glc.us.com or simply click the link below.